Good morning, members. Good morning, members. May I refer you to some electrical papers? First of all, confirmation of minutes. We've not received any proposal for amendment. Any comments? No? Thank you. After the last meeting, we issued a submission from the Hong Kong Women Workers Association requesting the panel to discuss the provision of childcare services. I believe members have all got it. We don't need to discuss it. Then items for discussion at the next meeting. There are two papers, paper CB bracket 620 bracket 01 and 620 bracket 02. List of outstanding items and list of follow-up actions. Any comments? I'd also like to remind members that our next regular meeting will be held on the 11th of March at 10:45 a.m. in room 3. The administration has proposed two items. That is item 22 on the list of outstanding items, integrated community-based services for offenders, and item 23, promoting active aging. Any comments? Mr. Cheung Kwok Chi, Madam Chairman, I understand that this afternoon the Manpower Panel will have a joint meeting with us to discuss the manpower arrangements for the subvented homes. I understand that they are carrying out a study with results to be published in March. It's very difficult to recruit people to serve in these institutions. Today, we're more on foreign domestic helpers. For daycare centers as well as subvented homes, I believe the administration has to study how to assist the subvented centers and homes to resolve their manpower issues. I understand that promoting active aging is urgent. Can we add another item to the next agenda so that we can have the administration to discuss subvented centers and homes with us? Yes, in the afternoon we'll have a joint meeting with the Manpower Panel on the manpower issues related to private homes and centers. Mr. Cheung Kwok Chi mentioned the subvented homes and centers. I left the electrical for 4 years, but I have been following up on the issue. When we study elderly services and residential care homes for the elderly, we're very concerned about private homes, but very little was mentioned about subvented homes. So it's worthwhile to take both at the same time. So do you agree, members? If so, we may have to invite deputations to come. I agree. But perhaps we should not issue public invitations. The Hong Kong Council of Civil Service can send 2 to 3 representatives so that we can give them more time because they represent the whole industry. I'm not sure. Normally, when we issue invitations, we invite organizations and institutions related to private and subvented homes. You mentioned the Hong Kong CSS. In the past, we seldom just invited one institution. I'd like to have more time to discuss with the administration. I understand. I think the panel is very concerned about the issue as other organizations and institutions, so we should invite other institutions and organizations as well. All right? So if members agree, we'll have 3 items on the agenda for the next meeting. We will have a tight schedule today. We'll only end at 2:30 p.m. There's no way we can extend that meeting. So I'd like the meeting to progress more smoothly. So if members want to eat something, please feel free to do so. I asked the clerk yesterday whether we should buy something for members to eat. Dr. Fernando Chung, at 2:30, I have to chair a subcommittee meeting on integrated education, so it's impossible for me to sit till 3 p.m. No, it's 2:30 p.m. I will be a duty member for a case conference, so we should grasp our time better. Mr. Ronnie Tong, sorry, Madam Chairman, I haven't finished. Madam Chairman, next time, if we have several important issues at one meeting, you should try to avoid this. I'm not complaining about this hard work or heavy work, but if we want our discussions to be effective enough, Madam Chairman, it's really quite difficult to have 3 items at the same meeting with deputations for each item. So, Madam Chairman, in future, for important issues, please try to give ample time to each issue, each item. Thank you. The discussion items were decided by members. We have not expected so many deputations to come for the 3rd discussion item today. That is medium and long-term social welfare planning. So sorry. So thank you, Dr. Fernando Chung. Mr. Ronnie Tong, Madam Chairman, I'd like to express the same view. It's better to separate the items for different meetings. I have another meeting at 11, and then 11:30 I have a forum on budget. This morning I'd like to sit here, but it's really impossible for me to sit through the whole meeting. I hope that you'll have a quorum. If we don't have a quorum, it will look very ugly. I agree. Many people would like us to act in accordance with their requests. At the same time, we face a lot of challenges at the same time. I believe all members here face the same problems as Mr. Ronnie Tong. So I'll try my very best. Next time I'll try to make better arrangement. But there are issues beyond our control. I was surprised by so many deputations for medium and long-term social welfare planning. So thank you very much for your hard work. So we'll move on to the first discussion item, non-renewal of contracts of social welfare departments, non-civil service contract community work organizers. We've received 2 papers, paper by the administration and another by the LegCo Secretariat, and we have deputations attending. So please invite the deputations to come in. For this part, we only have 4 deputations. Welcome all of you. Please be seated. We have 4 deputations. Yes.
唔該晒。冇彈啊！你冇彈。係，歡迎大家嚇。
Yes, welcome all of you.
歡迎大家。
Welcome. Yes, our colleagues are assisting you.
係。好。請按照係啦。早晨，多位。
Good morning. Welcome. The discussion item today is very clear. Well, basically, we're discussing the non-civil service contract staff, and we'd like to listen to their views. I'd like to remind you that in front of you, we have 3 channels. Number 1 floor, 0 floor, channel 1 Cantonese, channel 2 English. You can wear your earpiece if necessary, and you can adjust the volume. Administration, would you please briefly take us through the paper? Madam Chairman, last time when we came here, it's the 12th of April last year. At that time, we introduced to members under CSSA a number of work placement projects, their concepts as well as implementation details, so I won't repeat them. Today we are here to report to you the 2 foci of last year's work. First of all, integration of services. We successfully commissioned 26 NGOs in 41 small communities of Hong Kong, launch a new self-reliance project starting from the 1st of January this year. In our department, we have 80 NCSC community work organizers. We'd like to provide them with assistance so that they can find appropriate jobs. I'll briefly explain to members what we've done in assisting them to find jobs. There are a number of aspects. First of all, employment assistance. We invited the Labor Department to introduce its employment services. We also collected job vacancies and their details, covering civil service and non-civil service job vacancies in public organizations and NGOs. We send them a copy each or send the information to them by emails. We also arranged professional recruitment professionals to organize workshops and seminars to teach them interview and skill tests. We also fetched former colleagues who have sought jobs successfully to share their experience with them. And then together with the Employees Retraining Board, we conducted a briefing session on the entry requirements and the job market of the industry suitable to the CWOs. And we also arranged personal counseling services to our colleagues. We also subsidized our colleagues in terms of time and tuition fee to attend relative programs, computer courses, interview and skill tests, basic law knowledge, etc., had been included in the curriculum of training courses. And we've also referred our colleagues to NGOs that are arranging new self-reliance schemes for us. Now, these projects will provide job experience services such that our CWO colleagues would find them appropriate. So when these organizations started their recruitment exercises, we obtained consent from 72 CWO colleagues so that their particulars could be referred to the organizations and institutions for recruitment. At the time of the issuance of this paper, 29 colleagues have empowered or authorized us to refer their particulars to the organizations. And just recently, Mr. Tang also referred some colleagues to us. We obtained prior consent from some of them, and we're still consulting the remaining colleagues. This morning we received 4 other consents, so altogether we have 33 at the moment. For these 33 colleagues, 1 took the initiative to change job, 9 were absorbed by the SWD, 2 are waiting for time arrangements for transfers, 1 in March, on another date to be confirmed. Another 8 had been recruited by organizations, but due to personal reasons, they did not accept the appointment. 5 did not receive interview invitations. 4 attended interviews, but have not yet found a job yet. Another 4 just gave us their consent for referral, so we'll follow up on them. So the latest situation is that 59 non-civil service contract colleagues are still with the SWD. 36 of them have not authorized us to refer them to NGOs. Anyway, we'll continue to communicate with non-public organizations and NGOs to obtain job vacancy information, employees retraining program details, etc., in order to arrange referrals. I understand that some NGOs are still considering recruiting appropriate CWOs. So by positive and active referrals, we would like to further assist our colleagues in finding suitable jobs. Thank you. Deputations now. Will they have to follow their sequence?
I would like to remind you that you only have 3 minutes to speak, and your remarks in this meeting will not be protected by Cap 382, privileges and powers and privileges of electoral ordinance, and your submissions will not be protected by this ordinance too. First, Mr. Leung Chi-moon, convener of SWD Contract Staff Concern Group. Thank you. Chairman, members, apart from thanking you, Chairman, for allowing me this chance to speak, I would like to thank the former management of the SWD for giving us a hope. It is important to have a hope because hope can give people a sense of motivation to overcome the difficulties. I have many points to make, but I only have 3 minutes. I will try to be brief. First, a question for government officers. Why are we dismissed? What kind of ordinances or what guidelines or what codes have we breached so that we are now terminated? Besides, just now, the Deputy Director said that he wanted us to go to NGOs. But Deputy Director, you have to know that some NGOs may not be happy with us. They may have complaints or grievance. Work experience in NGOs may not be similar with work in SWD. As a result, our 10 years of experience as CWOs may not be valued by NGOs at all. Besides, the press release of the department talked about participation in the work. For CWOs, we have to adjust our mentality, because in the past 10 odd years, we wanted to mobilize the participants to work, unlike in NGOs that they have to maintain their participation rate in their own organizations. The Secretary for Civil Service said that non-civil service contract staff with over 5 years of experience should be gradually converted to civil servants. These colleagues have worked for the government for a long time. So are you now asking them to sit examinations to be recruited by the government, by the same department or by other departments? Now, the work has been done, so there is no reason that we will be converted into civil servants. The department said that you have no power, and the Bureau said that the power has been delegated to the department, but then you are shirking responsibilities. Today, I treasure this opportunity of exchange and dialogue, but the director is not here. Mr. Matthew Zhang is not here. We value this opportunity, but he doesn't want to meet with us, so I don't know what more I can say. Thank you. Next, Mr. Leung Chen-Pui, convener of SWD Contract Staff Concern Group. Good morning, Chairman, members. I want to ask, according to the CSB's regulations, for NCSC staff for more than 5 years should be converted into civil servants. We have started working since 1999. How many years have we worked for the department? 14 years already. So why is it that now we are being dismissed? Have you considered accepting us as civil servants? No, you haven't. Based on your paper, you said you will do a review, or you have done a review, but no one has told us the outcome of the review. In 2006, the CSB already reviewed the NCSC staff, and that some of them should be converted into civil servants. Why were we not included at that time? Why didn't you terminate us? You only dismissed us now. How many years of service have you wasted? You asked us to work in NGOs, so I think you are like the unscrupulous employers. If I operate a restaurant and then I dismiss you all and then I recruit you once again, everything will start from scratch. All the past years of service will then go down to the drain. Is this reasonable? You always said that you wanted to be fair and legal and reasonable. Have you been fair to us? We have worked for you for 14 years. Why didn't you terminate us earlier? Besides, government officers always said to members of the public that you have to be conscientious, but you are not conscientious to us. You are now working in the SWD, in the Labor and Welfare Bureau, but what you have done has distorted my confidence and trust in civil servants. You are really unscrupulous. It is outrageous for you to ask me to go to work in NGOs. This is an insult. You asked me to work in another place and to do the same thing, and all my years of service will be counted from the beginning. I don't think this is reasonable and fair. All the government officers dare not face up to us. I don't know what more to say. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, members. Thank you. Next, Mr. Zhang Ping-lok, Chairman of SWD Non-Civil Servants Concern Group. 4 points. Number one, talking about self-reliance. This concept is deeply rooted in Hong Kong people. The SWD has been working on this, and then on the 31st of March 2012, the department said that we no longer needed to work for the department. well, we feel helpless. Even though there is still the objective and work nature of community work in the program, but then the core value of the work has changed. The SWD referred to social circumstances and work arrangement in outsourcing the work. And then I think they only sought our help when they needed it, and they dumped us when they didn't need us. And I think there is a kind of transfer of benefits. Besides, concerning policy formulation, you have taken into consideration various options, but then the impacts and adverse effects can only be seen after a long time. I hope the department will be prudent. I think experts in the area and various involved parties should consider all the grounds and justifications, and there should be due procedure for decision to be made. And talking about the disbursement of unemployment allowance, there must be the right measures to make sure that public funds are well spent. Number 3, we have helped the unemployed to go back to the labor market, and we have helped alleviating the unemployment problem and the possible abuse of unemployment allowance. I think SWD needs to review the recipients' motivation to work and also offer ways to find jobs so that the recipients can integrate back into society. If you delegate this monitoring power to NGOs and charitable organizations, this is irresponsible. When there are problems, you only rely on liaison, coordination, and investigation to solve possible problems. I think this is unrealistic. You have outsourced the community work plan to NGOs. I and my colleagues find this incomprehensible. And in the past year, we received the notice that our contracts won't be renewed. We have spent 14 years here. We have been working very hard for the department. Now it seems that the department cannot continue to employ CWOs on non-civil service contract basis because you don't want to be questioned or challenged by LegCo members, so you asked us to resign. Since 2004, we have already strived for on-the-job training and improvements to occupational safety and health. Sorry, your time is up. Sorry. Okay, then I will stop here. Thank you. Next, Mr. Chow Chit-hing, convener of SWD Non-Civil Service Contract Employee Union or Labor Union. I would like to share my feelings. We are non-civil service contract staff. We have worked for the department for 6 to 13 years. I have worked for the department for 12.5 years. When I joined, I was in the 30s. Now I am almost 50. So what kind of work can I take up now? If you say that there is no age discrimination in our society, who will believe that? How many tenures do we have? We have spent our prime time in the SWD. What kind of employments can we now take up? Let me go back to conscience. We have been working for the department for over 10 years. At that time, our pay was $9,000 odd. It was considered high salary, but it is like a kind of giving favors. Now, over the past years, there was inflation, and do you know how much hardship we faced? People said that our salary was high. I think LegCo members will understand that government officers are cold-blooded. the government always asked the companies to be conscientious employers, but now the government is not conscientious at all. You are outsourcing the work as well as the responsibilities. In relation to community work, there are a lot of other elements that you are not clear about. Have you considered the livelihood of these workers? Will there be family tragedies in the future as a result of this dismissal? I'm not threatening you, but there may be people who may suffer from emotional problems. You asked us to work in NGOs, but NGOs only pay an even lower salary, as low as $8,000, and working hours far exceed the working hours stipulated in the contract. Now in our society, working overtime is just very commonplace, but then salary should be reasonable. However, unreasonably long working hours will affect family life. So I think this is contradictory to the concept of being a conscientious employer. Let's not talk about salaries. Do you know that when an NGO interviewed my colleagues, that NGO didn't want to employ us because our experience is not useful to them? NGOs don't want to implement work guidelines set by SWD. If the guidelines are breached, then the allowance or the subventions may be affected. They won't implement. They don't want to lose participants. If there are fewer participants, they will have less resources, and so they will have less revenue. And as a result, more people will have to rely on CSSA. I need a few more seconds. Can the government arrange a transfer of our colleagues to other departments? Recruitment of civil servants is based on fair, open, and reasonable principles. Mr. C.Y. Leung said that during extraordinary time, there should be extraordinary measures. I think that if the government is willing to do it, it is definitely capable of doing so. So, government officers, can you try to strive for benefits for us colleagues instead of causing more social problems? Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Because of time constraints, government officials, can you please give a brief response? Later on, our colleagues, LegCo members, may ask questions. Just a brief response. Just now, colleagues talked about dismissal. This is not a dismissal because every year we review the contract. And this time we're talking about reorganization of service. And last time we gave an explanation to LegCo. We're talking about a new integrated service mode, which can offer one-stop service to service users. This will improve service and resources can be better utilized. I understand that some colleagues have worked for more than 10 years and some other colleagues have worked for 6 to 10 years, so this is not an ideal arrangement. But I hope you'll understand that in 1999, we introduced this employment assistance program, including the community work program. And at that time, we needed to explore the right model. And over the past 10 years, service has been developing, the model has been adjusted. We have introduced different pilot schemes, and bit by bit, we have commissioned NGOs to provide the service. This is a trend. Regarding CWOs, we have made use of this contract arrangement and we review it every year. Just now, some colleagues said that in 2006, the CSB reviewed the NCSC arrangement. At that time, LegCo also followed that up. The paper at that time also referred to the CWOs. At that time, there were 133 CWOs. And at that time, they were not converted to civil servants because the service model or service mode was being reviewed. In the same year, we did not recruit any new CWOs. And in recent years, when the department met with the labor unions, we explained the trend, and we said that we will review the service mode. We said that they won't be converted into civil servants, and it is not possible to permanently employ these contract staff. But we undertook that when we had a final conclusion, we would notify colleagues as soon as possible so that they will have enough time to make preparations. Last year, the policy address talked about reorganizing the service, and Finance Committee gave funding approval. And in February, we notified colleagues at the first instance. And in the past year, we had been helping colleagues on all fronts. In our department, there are no comparable positions for these colleagues. Some colleagues just asked whether they can take up other civil servant positions. As stated in para 17, it is stated that recruitment of civil servants is based on open and fair principles. And in our department, recently, we tried to recruit Social Security assistants, and I understand that some qualified colleagues had taken the examination. For our colleagues, there is not the need for screening. They can interview right away. But for external applicants, they have to be screened before attending interviews. At the end of the day, whether they will be recruited will be considered in a comprehensive way based on fair and open principles. In 2012, we recruited Social Security assistants. At that time, there were over 13,000 applicants, and after screening, we only interviewed 1,300 odd. And there were only 160 odd successful applicants. So for the external applicants, their success rate is slightly over 1%. In 2007, 2009, and 2012, in these 3 years, we recruited Social Security assistants. And our CWOs also took the examination without having to be screened, and the success rate was 12 to 15%. So there is already a difference.
So I want to say is that there are some concerns outside that this particular arrangement of ours is unfair. So we must balance in this matter. In terms of the work being conducted, now even though the NGOs are not attractive to some colleagues, but their experience is very similar to those of the NGOs under the Intensive Employment Assistance Fund projects. So I hope that they will consider the NGOs because it is appropriate. So if the colleagues are willing to give their information to let the NGOs consider it, we will assist them in that matter. Yes, thank you. Next, we have some colleagues. Dr. Fernando Zheng. Yes, thank you, Chairman. Now, these colleagues were working in the SWD to help unemployed CSSA receivers to find work. And they did this for more than 10 years. And now they're being dismissed. They themselves have to look for work. This is very sad and tragic. More than 10 years working in the SWD. Now, this is an SWD that purports to be just and full of charity. And now they're firing colleagues that have been working for more than 10 years. I don't really understand how these colleagues, after working for more than 10 years, will still be hired under the NCSC. The NCSC should be used for temporary workers, those who know that they're only working for a short period of time. But these colleagues, some of them have worked for 14 years. How is that possible? I think the SWD is abusing this system. And I think the Civil Service Bureau has been careless. They should not have approved the SWD to hire these colleagues under such a framework for more than 10 years. So first, looking at your documents, SWD, you say that this framework allows you to rapidly respond to quickly changing environments. But this is more than 10 years. How can there be rapid changes? Second, I think the fact that the director is not here is very disrespectful to the colleagues. At your own particular department, you have fired more than 10 employees, and now you don't even come to LegCo. Personally, I think it's regretful that he's not here. Third, as the SWD knows that they were dismissing the colleagues, first they must handle that in the past few years when they're hiring, they should. It's not just, as the deputy director had said, to simply encourage colleagues to hire them, encourage colleagues to be in the SWD. They let them skip the screening process. Of course, you have to be fair, but these are your own colleagues. You should do your best to solve the employment problem of each individual, and it's not just telling them to apply it themselves. And also, if you tell them to go to NGO, that's very unfair, because it's letting the NGO to disregard their years of service. That is not even a choice for them. So a majority of colleagues still remain in SWD. I think the whole arrangement is very regretful. Yes, thank you. I think that I very much agree with what you have said. I think the SWD has used it's unscrupulous to use such measures. Mr. Tan Ka-pyo. Thank you, Chairman. So I've received 31 colleagues' information. So I think it's very sad that 16 of these colleagues have been working at the SWD for more than 10 years. So they have spent 10 or more years to work in the SWD. But I've only heard very cold figures that 10% of them can find some work. So that may actually mean only 1 or 2 colleagues. So I think that we should continue to hire them. Maybe they don't have to be civil servants. And I see that some of them may not have the academic qualifications. It's a realistic situation. But they have spent a lot of time to do their work and work on this SFS scheme. I hear from the SWD that this scheme is always undergoing changes. I think it's very regretful that all these changes or reviews, they don't consider the employees' situations. So they're not being considerate of the people, but are only thinking of cost and benefit. They only want to contract out these services. They don't think that these employees can also raise their potential and continue to work. So, Deputy Director, do you think that these colleagues do not have the necessary qualifications to continue working here? So we're talking about the developments of this program. Over the past 10 years, this the last step is that we hope to give such work to the NGOs. In terms of the integrated employment assistance scheme, has always been undergoing testing since 2001, and now we have some single-parent family plans or youth programs. So in all these programs, we see that there are a lot of similarities between them. Now, if they are only developing separately, that will not be a convenience to receivers of these assistance. You're not answering my question. Were you planning to help these employees to meet the requirements of these programs? So you're saying that you give them training to learn basic law. So in the beginning, you weren't thinking to allow these employees to integrate into your program. So these are more than 10 years. You haven't answered my question. Are you saying that they have no value and they cannot be integrated into your program through training? Now, because this program is run by NGOs, as I've said, so I think completely you are outsourcing the situation of these employees. In fact, it's not outsourcing at all. Even if it's outsourcing, they will let them have a good subsidy and ensure that they have good employment after. Of course, we don't agree with this because it means they don't have the work experience considered. But now you're not even allowing them to have new employment. I think that's very cold-blooded. Dr. Fernando Jern. Sorry, Mr. Chen Kwok-che. Yes, I think in 2008, 2009, we also talked about this topic. And we see that the administration in treating the positions of the NCSC they have completely not adjusted the salaries of these colleagues, and they only do it considering the livelihood standards and make small adjustments. So they must tolerate this for all these years. But now, today, you are dismissing them, and you're saying that you're referring them to NGO, and the salaries of NGO is so cold-blooded, and it's only $8,000. So for me, I'm thinking, how could anyone be willing to reduce the salary and leave a protective network? No one will be willing to do this. But now these colleagues must leave. Are you saying that the unemployment rate is not very high? You can just find a job that's around $10,000 or so. But the thing is, they're working this for so long, and they may have sentiments towards this type of work. And as they've mentioned, they hope that maybe they can use the government experience to find different jobs and to have priority. So that's what they want. But you don't even considering this. I would like to ask the administration, have you saved any money in this whole evolution of the program? Is it because you want to save money that you want to change the program to the way it is now? I want to ask the last question, have we saved any money? And the last panel meeting, we are saying that all of the money will be given, that we save will be given back to NGO. But have they made more work? Are they doing more work? So are you using the same amount of money and then asking them to do more? So the service elements are still remaining, and as I've said, the 4 service elements are still there. If we use an integrated mode, they still have, so they would have more room. So, Deputy Director, why don't you answer them? Is it that there is absolutely no priority for them to find work as civil servants? So in the documents, it's very clearly stated that if they want to become civil servants, they must be competing with employees outside. But I must emphasize that what we do in our department is that the outside applicants have to have a screening process. Can you say, let's say you leave 20% of the jobs to leave the NCSC colleagues to go them? So it's not saying that. So I think that would be a good way of doing it. Mr. Tan Ka-pyo said, when we're talking about 10%, it may only actually 1 or 2 positions. If you leave such positions to the employees, we can't do this because it will be a violation of the hiring principle of open and transparent. I want to supplement. You have enough time. You don't have enough time. Now, you've mentioned the salaries of NGOs, and if information that we see, that's because some colleagues are already working there. The salary is 9,400 to 11,000. That's around the same as us. So we are also giving 9,000 or 10,000 or so. So the salaries are very similar. So I think you're out of time. So I think we have to stop here because a lot of colleagues will need to ask questions. I hope members will also obey the time limit, but we are running out of time. Mr. Lau Chi-chang. Yes, Chairman. Looking at the suggestions and explanations from the department, now in this plan, since 1999, more than 10 years have passed and the SWD has been conducting review. I think the administration is very satisfied with the effectiveness of such a program. Otherwise, they wouldn't outsource this to find more people to do it. So, and for these NCSC employees, they have performed well. But if you think that they have done well and you're expanding the program, why is it that the administration has a poor attitude to these employees? That is, they're letting the NGOs to determine whether or not to hire these employees. Because if you think that these employees have worked well, you should hope that they can continue to work on this program because they'll make the programs more effective. And now you're just letting the NGOs make their own decision. Now perhaps the independent NGOs will have their own policies in terms of finding employees. So these CWOs may not be able to find work. And I hear from them that the salary is actually reduced. Now, so I'm thinking, if in the past that's your program and that's the NGO is program. So I mean, in the past you've been subsidizing the NGO, and then in the past you had some requirements in terms of the employees they hire. So why can't you, under the same framework, ensure that all of these colleagues can be hired by NGOs? So, Director, so when you are reviewing the work of these colleagues, what do you think? Deputy Director, yes. Now, this new integrated employment assistance scheme has formed by several projects. And social work is only one particular round. So once this work have been integrated, there will be an element of social work. But we also have the new thing called work exposure services. So the services will expand to different areas. So for these NGOs, when they are running these programs, have their own plans, and they have their own guidelines for hiring employees. So we must allow them to be autonomous. Yes, I'm sorry, Deputy Director. I must be very strict about the time, but we are running very short on time. So, I mean, Mr. Lau Chi-chang, just look at the documents. There are no novel ideas. Mr. Kwok Wai-kwang. Yes, thank you, Chairman. If we say that the administration is abusing this process, this incident shows that SWD is an example of this. So colleagues have been working here for more than 10 years. Now, from the start, the XWD has never thought that they will convert them to civil servants. And then from the 5th year to 10th year, so on, they never thought about this. This is a problem, Deputy Director. You've mentioned that you provide a lot of assistance, a lot of supports, a lot of seminars to these colleagues. Now, if you give such services to colleagues that have worked for 1 or 2 years, we'll all appreciate it. But these colleagues have been working here for more than 10 years. Whatever support you give them will not be enough, because everyone understands that, in theory, you must start thinking to convert them to become civil servants in 5 years. It's not to only think of whether the program should exist after 10 years. So you really must change your position. So when we're having meetings with these CWOs, we find the story very tragic. They have given all their youth and efforts into this program. And what for? Is that they hope that one day they can become civil servants. They can have a stable job until they retire. I think that is a very normal wish of all the workers. Because, Deputy Director, you also feel this. Because once you have a stable job, then you can support your family. But these colleagues did not have this. Every day they feel very insecure. Even more seriously, this is a fraud case. Is that you, Deputy? Is that you're telling these workers to keep on working here? They can't increase their salary, and they can go to a higher position. But you may have a chance to become a civil servant in more than 10 years and then have secure life, and you ask them to gamble on this. So the situation is, these colleagues have waited for 10 years, and they don't have this chance. You just very carelessly say that you will outsource it, and then you give all the work to the NGO, and then they lose all their work experience. So in the end, it's very simple. You should convert them to civil servants, and then let them to work in the NGOs. Or perhaps you go to a different department and let them be civil servants. So whatever support you give them an opportunity to change jobs. That's all rubbish and will not help them. So you haven't thought about their situation. You are out of time. Next is Mr. Poon Siu Peng. Yes, thank you. Now, hearing the CW's speeches, I feel very sad for them. Of course, we want to protect their jobs. Now, they worked here for more than 10 years, and they've given so much. We're always against the government being an unscrupulous employer and outsource their jobs. Now, this is an example of this. Now, you've said that the government is willing to give their information to the NGOs. Now, only like 9 colleagues want to do this. So in the future, maybe once these NGOs hire their colleagues, it may mean that they may lose their jobs eventually. In the paragraph 18, you're saying that the departments will continue to strive to provide appropriate support to the CWOs to help them secure suitable jobs as far as possible. So I think that you say that in the documents, you provide a lot of training for them, etc. So when you say that you continue to strive, so will it be that the SWD will think about whether there are any positions in the department that will be good for them? So I think that since you're launching new programs, there may be more programs. There may be more positions for them. So do you have any concrete arrangements for this? As I've said before, when you're talking about the old age living allowance, now if there are qualified colleagues that will want to work in that program, they will have to come to. Unlike outside applicants, they won't be screened and will interview them directly. So, and we are starting to hiring process. and we don't have other complementary jobs in the department. So in terms of their experience, I think it will be appropriate for them to work in the integrated employment assistance scheme. So if they are willing to give the information to the NGOs, we were willing to do our best. So you're saying you don't have any concrete plans. You only say that you do your best. So in the future, if the LegCo is reviewing the funding, we have to think about how to protect the jobs of employees. Yes, thank you for your suggestion here. Next is Mr. Albert Ho. Chairman, when I first started hearing the deputy directors, he says that they're colleagues. I think that's very chilling because he really didn't consider them as colleagues, because you have job security, but they really don't. I mean, if you are facing the same situation, you feel very angry. So I think it was very false when you say that when you call them colleagues, because you don't consider them as colleagues. Now, I really hope that you will think of them as colleagues. That is, you have to cherish their service for the past more than 10 years. Now, if they're not able, then they would have already left, or you would have ended their contract. So it's okay, of course, that you should give some money to NGOs or outsource some of the works. But you have some people who have been working here for so long, and they have their performance and experience and sense of belonging. So why is it that you cannot let them continue to perform for you? So for the news service, you can have the same news services, but you can keep some of the employees within the SWDs, perhaps some particular unit, so they can work alongside with the NGO, and then so we can see who works better. So how is that a problem? So that can be a new framework. Of course, I don't think they can continue to be temporary workers. Now, Chairman, I think you know. Yes. I think the hospital authority had a similar experience, but now, after so heavy criticisms, they have converted temporary workers to permanent staff. I think the government can also do this. Now, talking about 100 people or so, why should you let them like this? I hope you will consider to really utilize the employees, these colleagues, and really cherish them. If you really think that in the long term, you must change the framework. So I think that can be discussed long term. But if a public body, a government body, is talking about caring the citizens and wants people to be self-reliant, and now you're firing them, all these colleagues that have been working for so long, I think that is unreasonable. So I think if you continue to answer, you just repeat what you said before. So now the director is not here. I hope you go back and talk to him. So we have so much money, the government, so why are you not being conscientious? So I think all the colleagues have asked questions, and Mr. Leung Yu-chung. So I just repeat what has been said. So what we're facing now is a lot of NCSC workers, not just in this department, but others. Now, in other departments, we continue to discuss with them that when you are handling the situations of the NCSC employees, so you shouldn't just dismiss them according to contract. That is a very inhumane. Now, as a big employer, the government should not do this, and gives a very bad example to employers outside. So even though you're saying that I've only given you early notice, this really should not be taken. really must use different methods to solve this problem. It's something that we always stand firm on. So, and such as with the LCSD, they can allow the NCSC workers to continue working there. So why can't you do the same? You're not talking about a lot of people, not thousands or hundreds of employees. So if such a small number, why can't you make arrangements to let them work in your department, or perhaps, as you said, or let the employees leave when they want to? It's not just to very rigidly dismiss them, giving them 1 year's notice. So even though you're giving them 1 year's notice, which is quite long, doesn't mean that you are conscientious. And it also doesn't mean that you have saved resources for the society. Because these colleagues have experience, and you have trained them, and you have invested in them. So if you dismiss them, then you'll waste all of that. So I think that, I hope that you will follow some of the other departments, such as the LCSD. And I think that there are around 10,000 NCSC workers here. I think the government overall should allow a natural turnover and not just rigidly fire them. I hope the administration will rethink their ideas about this and don't think that just giving 1 year's notice is insufficient. Deputy Director. Now, 2 members have said that can we keep these employees on board. But as we've explained, because the program has already been changed and we give the services to the NGO to do, it's not possible. So I think one more thing I want to say, that LCSD, the food hygiene department also doing these things, but they allow some of them to remain on board. So why can't you do that? Deputy Director, as I've explained, if we let some of them stay as individual units, so that will be very different from our integrated one-stop service. Okay. So there are a lot of time has passed. Mr. Tan Ka-pyo has a motion. So why don't I read it? So we are criticizing the SWD is to not protect the employment of the CWO and insist on dismissing them on March 31st, 2013. We urge the SWD will continue to hire these community work organizers and let them convert to civil servants. Should I print this, or are there any amendments? So perhaps I will also talk about my feelings. Because a lot of colleagues, what colleagues have said, I completely agree. So I have seen that a lot of problems because of the NCSC.
Well, most departments have been very successful in handling their contract staff. Mr. Leung Yu-chung mentioned the SWD. I can still remember the time when Mrs. Rita Lau was the director of department. Well, director, you encounter the same problem. At that time, Dr. E.K. Yao provided training to these contract staff. From HA to HCA, there was a ladder for them to climb up the hierarchy. So this time the SWD is very cold-blooded. I don't know, starting when the SWD had formulated such cold-blooded policies. So, Deputy Director, you've listened to members' views. You should go back and talk to your colleagues. For any government department, well, there's no such occurrence. It's such a cold-blooded policy. You don't want to consider these issues. I hope that you can think twice about this. Colleagues, if there's no amendment to Mr. Tan Ka-pyo's motion, I'd like to take a vote by show of hands. Any seconder? Mr. Albert Ho and Mr. Poon Siu Ping. Any objection? Any objection? No. So, those who are in favor of the motion, please raise their hands. Okay, thank you very much. Deputy Director, I hope that you can go back and discuss with your director and Bureau Director. It's really a scandal if this is to happen in your department. So please go back to think about our motion very carefully. So thank you very much for attending. This is all the LegCo can do. We're helpless. I very much agree with Mr. Poon Siu Ping. When the SWD comes for funding, we should have a little bit of anger or agitation. Anyway, we do not agree to this policy of the SWD. Next item on the agenda, medium and long-term social welfare planning, with 2 papers for members. Government departments and deputations have been invited to attend, with 70 deputations for this item. So I'd like to inform colleagues that as we are behind schedule by 30 minutes for the last item, we have to grasp the time better for this item. So we have to control time better. Good morning, all of you. Good morning. Welcome all of you. Good morning. Good morning. Please be careful of the steps.
11點鐘啊 ？OK， 得㗎。講完就得㗎。講完。你想唔想提早講？你唔使嘅第二咗。哦，咁得啦得啦。佢第二個得啦。OK， 你第二個講，唔緊要唔緊要唔緊要唔緊要。係，歡迎各位朋友。
Welcome all of you. Good morning, all of you. Good morning. Today we have 72 deputations with us. They are to air their views on medium and long-term social welfare planning. A lot of people have signed up. This is an indication, Secretary, that for a long time we've not been reviewing the medium and long-term social welfare planning. So there are so many deputations. This meeting is scheduled to last till 3 p.m. Our planning was not good enough. The deputy chairman reminded me that the secretary should speak for 5 minutes and 3 minutes each for the deputations. For members, also 3 minutes each, including questions and answers. We have to grasp our time better, otherwise we won't have enough time. Secretary, thank you, Madam Chairman. Good morning, Madam Chairman, members and deputations. Here I'd like to wish you a happy new year, health and happiness. I'm pleased to see 72 deputations today for this public hearing. Earlier, we commissioned the Social Welfare Advisory Committee, SWAC, to conduct a study on long-term welfare planning to ensure that our policies and services can timely address the ever-changing demands for social welfare. In July 2011, SWAC submitted to the Bureau a report on long-term social welfare planning with a number of guiding principles in order to map out our directional basis for future developments. And in accordance with the actual circumstances and future developments of Hong Kong, policies and initiatives were proposed. So a framework has been laid. By enhancing the existing planning, the SWD has proposed consultation and planning. The planning mechanism proposed by SWAC will allow the welfare industry and the administration to have interaction and participation. And in-depth discussions are allowed for various projects to foster communication interaction. With interaction, transparency, and flexibility. So it's proposed that annually, in accordance with the latest situation of society, will consult society and plan for priorities and initiatives. Last year, at a panel meeting, we already said that we agreed to the proposed mechanism. And last year, we formally launched the initiatives. All along, we've adopted a flexible approach to plan for social welfare initiatives and policies. In accordance with the latest situation of Hong Kong and social welfare demands, and in accordance with resources available, we've put forth practicable proposals with sustainability, and recurrent resources and allocation of funding are involved usually. This will be an annual exercise and will closely monitor the situation. In terms of land supply and manpower supply, the policy address has placed emphasis on them, and these are the major concerns of the welfare sector for many years. Through various avenues and with multi-pronged approach, appropriate land sites will be identified and manpower will be provided to cope with the various types of social welfare to suit present and future needs. For hostels and residential homes, we've kept in close contact with the welfare industry in identifying land sites for welfare purposes. We also actively explore new developments and redevelopment projects to reserve land for welfare facilities. The Bureau, together with welfare organizations, actively study how to more effectively encourage NGOs to release their land, and through redevelopment and in situ expansion and modification, diversified facilities and self-financed facilities can be provided. We should more flexibly make use of the lotteries fund and use better methods to assist these organizations in the course of planning and development the necessary assistance. For manpower, we're concerned about the tight manpower level for the allied health personnel. We're also concerned about the elders. For the next 3 years, for nurses and professional healthcare workers, including physiotherapists and occupational therapists, will study with the organizations how to attract and retain more people to take care of the disabled and the elders. Chairman, I'm pleased to continue to listen to the industry as to how we can plan better for the future and do our work better. Thank you.
Mr. Ho, can a copy of the Secretary's remarks be given to us? Well, I only have one copy with me. You haven't photocopied it? Right. Well, this is done in my handwriting. Okay. So I will try to provide copies for members as soon as possible. Deputations, thank you and welcome. On the table, you will see an earpiece. Channel 0 is the floor. Channel 1, Cantonese. Channel 2, English. You can also adjust the volume. You don't have the earpiece? Oh, you can't hear anything? I will ask our colleagues to help. If you don't know how to adjust the volume, please seek help from our helpers. I would like to remind you that your remarks today and your written submissions will not be protected by LegCo, Powers and Privileges Ordinance Cap 382. You won't be protected by this ordinance. Now, because of time constraints, I will allow each of you 3 minutes to speak. Let's start now. First, Mr. Chang Chor-kin, Chairman of Staff Union of Mental Health Association of Hong Kong. Yes, Chairman, members, in order to have very effective social welfare medium to long-term planning, we have recommended 1 precondition and 5 suggestions. 1, abolish the financial envelope system. This system stipulates the amount of expenditure allowed, and each department can only spend the money available. So it should be abolished as soon as possible. Otherwise, there cannot be concrete planning. Recommendation 1, the lump sum grant system should be overhauled, because this has been in place for 12 years, but there have been a lot of problems and grievance among fellow workers. So it should be reformed. In order to have long-term social welfare assistance model. And next, there should be a social welfare development bureau to be set up and chaired by led by EXCO. And there should be coordination of population, housing, healthcare, and so on, so that deep-rooted social problems can be solved. Proposal 3, formulate social welfare policy white paper so that there will be a planning mechanism for the medium to long term. There should be a blueprint and vision widely accepted by the public, and each cycle should be 5 years, and long-term planning should be on 10-year basis. There should be objectives, assessment mechanism, roadmap, and timetable in the form of white paper for the public to monitor. Proposal 4, there should be rehabilitation and service white paper. In Hong Kong, there are 360,000 disabled people, accounting for 1/7 of population. They have unique needs. The 1995 Disability Rehabilitation Policy and Service White Paper should be taken reference from. It talks about service demand, and it contains undertaking on service. Proposal 5, social welfare information sharing platform. A platform should be set up on the internet with medium to long-term social welfare plan, SWD, and NGOs service information. The information should be updated regularly. There should be more information transparency and accountability, so that public and stakeholders' views can be taken on board. This platform is a public space. We hope the government can acknowledge the precondition and our 5 recommendations. Thank you. Next, Dr. Alice Yoke, President of Hong Kong Social Workers Association. Good morning, Chairman and members. All along, our association has been working hard to upgrade and defend the professionalism of social workers and upgrade service quality and effectiveness. On long-term social welfare plan in the past 5 years, we provided 5 written submissions to LegCo and the government. This time, we're going to present 4 views. 1, for the mid to long-term plan, it should be based on demand and data to formulate policy objectives and measures to effectively solve problems. In relation to human resources planning, there should be a continuing education for social workers. We're happy to hear that Mr. Matthew Zhang had talked about human resources, but he has not taken into consideration social workers' human resources. Long-term plan must be backed by good human resources plan. Social workers have to deal with many complicated social problems, so they have to undertake continuing education. Their professional qualification should be enhanced. There should be resources to help non-degree holder social workers so that they have resources to take social work degree course. Besides, there should be more funding for social workers to further their education. There should be paid leaves and subsidized tuition. And next, there should be professional steering of social workers. Under the lump sum grant system, there are a lot of inadequacies. So for new services, there's not enough resources to recruit supervisors. For existing services, there is not enough resources to have adequate supervision. So funding should be increased by the government. In order to solve this problem, we wanted to recommend a supervision or steering support scheme, and there should be funding for this scheme. Next, there should be effective development of land. As said just now, there is a lack of social welfare premises. NGOs should have land for further development. The government can discuss with these NGOs to expedite development. We are concerned about the point made in the policy address. 36 sites with 27 hectares of area will be developed into housing. I think this change is worth concern. So when the government changes land use, I hope that social service facilities can be maintained. Next, there should be a social planning working group. For the current plan, it won't be there after 5 years, so this point should be addressed. Thank you. Next, Mr. Chan Chung-yao of Hong Kong Go. Today, we are talking about long-term social welfare planning. Long-term refers to the time after the current government. And for a midterm plan, again, it won't be seen within this term of government. Mr. Matthew Cheung talked about a lot of policies. Well, the public asked for territory-wide retirement protection, and there should be three-party contribution. I think many people support that. So why can't a committee be set to look into that? Poverty line will be discussed in 2013, and Mr. Matthew Cheung said that poverty alleviation will be given top priority. But then what is regrettable is that a person had lost his leg. And in order to apply for disability allowance, a person had waited a long time until he had become mentally handicapped. And do we want to see 1 million people taking to the streets on the 1st of July? Then the government officer will step down at that time. Mr. Matthew Cheung, within this term of government, are you going to put in place territory-wide retirement protection? And what is your plan to alleviate poverty in the coming 5 years? Thank you. Next, Association for the Advancement of Feminism. Democratic Alliance for the Betterment and Progress of Hong Kong, Ms. Zhang Fan Lan. Chairman, members, good morning. Hong Kong faces an aging future. So in relation to long-term planning, we attach importance to how we can make preparation and how we can build a harmonious society. And concerning housing for the elderly, no matter whether we're talking about public or private housing, there should be mixed development model. It is good to have a kind of elderly housing concept. And the elderly needs a lot of hospitalization service and community care. We hope that a 5-year plan can be formulated. Concerning elderly's waiting time for hospitalization, I hope that a line can be drawn so that the waiting time won't be too long. As regards carers for the elderly, more training should be given to them so that they can be more effective and more efficient in taking care of the elderly. There should be promotion opportunity so that they can stay in the profession for a longer time. Next, about the territory-wide retirement protection scheme, we are in support of that. We hope that the existing MPF scheme can be improved on. Fees should be lower. For healthcare services, public healthcare services should be improved, especially for the elderly. Dental care scheme for the elderly is in existence. However, when we contact the elders, we understand that there are a lot of barriers. So many elders cannot really benefit from it. The community care arrangement should also be enhanced because many elders cannot get a place in the elderly care home, so they stay in the community. So there are a lot of hidden problems about that. Some elders can continue to take up employment, so we hope that an elderly employment fund can be set up so that they can still contribute to society on the basis of staggered working hours or flexible working hours. Concerning building a harmonious society, we hope that there will be a family-friendly policy. Thank you. Thank you. Next, Hong Kong Council of Social Service, Ms. Chang Lai Ling, Business Director. Thank you, Chairman. Good morning. I represent Hong Kong CSS. I want to make 3 suggestions. Number 1, when the government formulates mid to long-term social welfare planning, there should be a development blueprint, strategic direction, and unique targets and service pledge. Concerning elderly waiting time for elderly care home places, the waiting time should not be longer than 1 year, and for the disabled, they should not wait more than 3 years. While our population is aging, there should be a midterm service plan. There should be an elderly service 5-year plan. Next, a special committee should be set up to coordinate among different bureaus. Social welfare involves education and healthcare. And we hope various stakeholders can be allowed to participate. Number 3, in this year's policy address, we appreciate the government's saying that social welfare should be done in a proactive manner, but we have to make good use of land. We hope the government and NGOs, in terms of pays and incentives, can enhance things. The SWD should make good use of the planning mechanism, which has been well established. As for human resources, the auxiliary medical workers face very heavy workload and manpower is tight. And we have done a survey. In 38 NGOs, we have done a pay survey. Turnover of auxiliary medical workers was 23.8%, and for personal carers, turnover was 24.4%, especially for elderly service and disability service. So we are highly concerned about that. We hope the government can discuss with NGOs as soon as possible to identify short-term, medium-term, and long-term solutions. For example, hardship allowance can be granted, and for long-term, the career ladder as well as the remuneration should be reviewed so that service quality will not be jeopardized. Thank you. Next, Mr. Tony Shing of Fourth Right Caucus. Good morning, Chairman and government officers. Our position can be summarized in 3 lines. Number 1, we confirm that we do need a long-term plan. Number 2, the mechanism stated by the Secretary is one that won't be effective. The government is just shirking responsibilities. Number 3, Hong Kong needs a social welfare policy white paper. Why do we need a long-term plan? I think many deputations have made their points very clearly. If you look at the aging population in Hong Kong, in 2039, those over 65 will increase in number from 940,000 to 2.5 million. This is not a new issue. We cannot solve it by just discussing it at that time. Now, for nurses and professionals, well, there are not enough of them, so more people need to be trained. So for this reason, we need to do an earlier planning. We know that human resources, land development, funding need long-term arrangements. We don't want to just deal with things as and when they happen, and we don't want to just take care of people who are louder in expressing themselves. Concerning long-term social planning, social welfare planning, the existing status is a slogan-based consultation mechanism. The plan doesn't contain concrete elements, timetable, priorities, and so on. Every year, there will be just 1 to 2 very vague and hollow discussion within the sector. How can we make sure that we can narrow the wealth gap and solve elderly problems? This mechanism also shirks responsibilities to the families. They're saying that there is less care within families because family cohesion is not strong enough. And when it comes to social investment and services or social enterprises, upgrading NGOs' ability, all these are just slogans. There's no mention of long-term timetable, plan, roadmap, and human resources planning. In Hong Kong, we do have white paper, so I think we should revert back to the white paper mechanism. Thank you. Next. Concerned group of small welfare agencies. Vice Convener Ms. Wong Sawa. Good morning, Chairman, members, government officers, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to wish you a happy Chinese New Year here. I hope that there will be some progress in terms of long-term social welfare planning. In 2011, SWAG issued a report, and when the report was issued in the social welfare sector, we were very disappointed. The report only contains some guiding principles. A lot of points are not included, so we are very disappointed. This report is just a beginning of the beginning, and after a year, so far, no progress has been made. There's no direction, strategy, blueprint, or framework, so we are disappointed. We just want to make one point today. The government always emphasizes that social welfare planning must be flexible. We are very disappointed about that. We think that mid to long-term plan is very important. Every year, we have the opportunity to discuss with the government department on yearly social welfare plan. We think that yearly discussion cannot satisfy or meet the needs of the very complicated livelihood problems in our society. Long-term social planning, social welfare planning must be backed by mid to long-term plan, and then there should be also very flexible contingencies.
Looking in the past 5 years, it seemed there is no more planning because it was not flexible enough. But in the opposite, after 10 years, we've in a flexible way of handling planning. there have been a lot of disappointments in that. So we cannot use a principle to plan the social welfare in Hong Kong. In the government reports, there were a lot of measures that were discussed, and they're all very piecemeal. So today, we will not give any suggestions regarding those piecemeal measures. We think that there must be a medium and long-term planning. There's already a framework now, and we hope that the government will, as soon as possible, discuss this with the sector, because we have a lot of ideas about how to plan it, and hope that the government will have the sincerity to conduct a long-term planning. Thank you. The Parents Association of Preschool Handicapped Children, Ms. Julie Lau Chu Lai, Executive Committee Member. Thank you. Last year, there was a report from the Bureau regarding different measures. Now, the contents of this is talking about the long-term planning. Now, even though it's very visionary, but we think that it's still a very long time away, because we hope that these long-term planning can actually be implemented, and so those who are handicapped can receive care. And no matter regarding the guidelines or directions of the report, we have several suggestions. First is to hope that we can let handicapped people be employed. Of course, the government has given a lot of training and education to the handicapped, but the policy address has also given some measures encouraging employers to employ handicapped people. But of course, the reality is that the employment rate remains low, and the government must have more strength to conduct, to allow them to be employed, such as with tax initiatives, to let them be employed, or perhaps buy products from handicapped people who have made them, so that they can be self-reliant. And second is to improve the home care for handicapped people. There are not enough care centers for handicapped people, but the government is using a multi-pronged approach to provide care centers. And the parents hope that to increase manpower for care centers, and to hope to have support for home care, so to help people when they're taking care of the family members who are handicapped, so that handicapped people don't have to go to hospitals but can live in the community, or perhaps so to delay their need to go to the hospital. So I think the hospital care should be the last step and not the first. Third is to have services in regards to the handicapped people who are aging, because they actually age faster than others, because there's 52% of them are above 40, and those who are above 40 is 41.6%, and then this problem will just exacerbate. And we need to have a long-term program that is based on data. So we hope that the SWD can review the framework and to have long-term planning for the support. Lastly is in terms of manpower. No matter whatever measures the government takes, we'll of course need manpower to support this. So the long-term planning should have planning for manpower. And paragraph 118 of the policy address is saying that there's a lot of manpower shortage for medical and other social welfare services, so that we need more manpower. So this has also been mentioned by the secretary. So the Parents Association really hope that this can be taken. Thank you. Next is Mr. Yao Ta-yu, convener of the Concern for Social Welfare Planning Platform. Now, the CE has mentioned the planning for social welfare, is saying that he wants to use a practicable and flexible method to find land for such uses. So, for him, it seems that SW planning is only about the planning for land use. Of course, this is very narrow, and we do not agree with it. So, as Mr. Matthew Chung said, in 2001, there was a report in terms of the long-term social welfare planning, and he says that he wants to hear the opinions. I'm kind of angry about this, because I remember at that time, the panel had already had a meeting in the old electrical building, and there were a lot of the familiar faces, and there were a lot of criticisms about that particular report, and Mr. Matthew Chung never mentioned those criticisms, so I really suspect whether he was listening to us. So do we have to repeat what we said before, and will he listen to it? I hope that in the past he won't repeat what he has said in the past. In terms of planning, we have some simple ideas. The administration has always an attitude that they only solve a problem when they arise, and solve problems in a very piecemeal way. So perhaps I can use a simple example. Those elderly people or disabled people who need to waiting for hospitals care, they need to wait for a long time, and this trend is increasing. So perhaps very soon, a lot of times, a lot of people will not be able to wait for hospital. In fact, will die. So in fact, they're waiting to die instead of waiting to go to the hospital. So if the government has so much money, and then they don't work on this, I think that's very unconscionable. Also, I think that the planning should target the problems in society, and that should be based on data, and that should be transparent. And there should be a medium and long-term objective and guidelines and according to these guidelines, set up some measures and planning. Third, very importantly, in terms of manpower planning, in terms of financial planning, land use planning, etc., there must be an accountability. Fourth, in planning for SW, that must have involved with stakeholders and all citizens. We hope that the government in the future, in making this planning, can have an effective framework to conduct this. Thank you. Thank you. Next. Thank you for that. Next is Kwai Fong Estate Elderly Rights Concern Group, Mr. Chong Haoping, member. Thank you, Chairman. So I wish that all the people here today will have good health and will work smoothly and will not have less disputes, and who hope that we will have a territorial-wide retirement scheme. I want to remind Mr. Matthew Chung that before 1997, Matthew Chung was a good government official, but afterwards he has changed. So he is now like the CE, and he lies so much. And I hope that he won't continue and will truly help us elderly people and to give us the support that we are seeking. We only want to have stomachs fed and to have planning for the territorial-wide retirement scheme. So why are you talking about poverty alleviation? If you can have retirement plan for everyone will be fed. No one will come out and make disputes, and the society will be peaceful. So I hope that Mr. Matthew Chung will really change your ways now. After the handover, you really have changed a lot. It's true. You're not the Matthew Chung you were before. If you truly implement the territory-wide retirement scheme, and the entire Hong Kong people will benefit. Right now, the Treasury has too much money, so much money, and poor people are very hungry. So what kind of society is this? I hope that from today, Mr. Matthew Chung, you should listen to these people and discuss the policies with them. And we hope that. So I want to give this to Mr. Matthew Chung. That's all I have to say. Thank you. Yes, thank you. Next, I hope Ms. Lo Siu Lan. Yes, I want to hope everyone will have good health and have good fortune. So I have a suggestion today. Now the first CE, Tong Chu-Wah, was not good, and the second one was also not good, and now the current CE, Leung Chun-Ying, is also not bad. Now everyone says we should have territory-wide retirement scheme, but nothing has actually been done. Now, Mr. Matthew Chung, he's just saying that it's because the LegCo members, and now he hasn't done anything real. So, I mean, he says it's so hard to implement, but words are empty. Now, he's not concerned with the living of the Hong Kong citizens. Hong Kong is not just 400,000 people, it's 7 million people. I think you really must have a good think about this. And you should not just keep your old ways. Not just saying that you give $2,000 to old people is enough. That's not true. We need a retirement scheme. You're saying that this year you must take work and make some dramatic gesture, and everyone must unite to improve the society so we can be united and so we can have a prosperous society. That's all I have to say. Thank you. Next is Ms. Zhang Manwai of Labor Rights Commune. Yes, hello everyone, good morning. It's not my first time here, and I see Mr. Matthew Cheung again. So I don't know whether Mr. Matthew Cheung is prepared to be yelled at again today. I don't think this is my first time criticizing him, even though this is the new year. So first I have to say what I have come here to say. A lot of friends have said, and will not repeat today, is that there's a new piece of news item that Hong Kong's poverty in terms of elderly people, according to the CSD, as the figures have just been released by the CSD, is that in terms of the family median income is $20,600, but those families that are less than 10,000 is $550,000 families. So we can see that the poverty of people with jobs is increasingly bad. And of course, the elderly situation is also worsening because elderly people above 65 is 940,000 or so. But in fact, if we look at the elderly people who, a lot of people who do not have any support, it seems that elderly people need to work to have income. In fact, there are around 60 to 70,000 elderly people above 65 years old still need to work in order to sustain themselves. And their living is and they can't even support themselves in the most basic way. Looking at the figures, it's also clearly show that these elderly people who are working actually take around 7% of the overall elderly population. But the work they do would be non-technical laborers. So what they're earning is it's not really above the median wage. It's all of them. It's below the median wage, or I should say the majority of them. So we can see that besides people who are working and who are in poverty, we can also see that the situation is worsening for elderly people who are also working. Now we're talking about 940,000 people above 65. Now around 300,000 of them is living alone or living with their spouse. So we can see that the policy is not adequate. We need a long-term planning in terms of housing, medical, because they are not coordinated. We can see that there's a lot of people who are waiting to live in houses, such as 200,000 people. Many of them are singletons. Why is it been so much more now in terms of PRHH and others? It's because there's not a coordination for different policies in other different areas. In terms of the PRH policy, it keeps on making people leave the PRH. So we see that there's a lot of elderly people who live alone or only living with their spouse. So we want that we should have a territory-wide retirement scheme. And lastly, we hope that this year, Mr. Cheung, you will listen to our ideas. Otherwise, you will be like the prophecy that was talking about China, is because you are not a true gentleman. So even though it's a new year, I hope that in the new year, you will really hear the citizens' ideas and have territory-wide retirement schemes. Yes, thank you. I hope that all the friends, we have very strict timing today, so hope that 3 minutes each. Next is Ms. Chu Moon-chong, caretaker's concern. Thank you. So people who support the Lam Chanying is saying that he's only been in the job for 8 months, and therefore we should give him a time to familiarize himself, and then we should have an OALA, and then to give him some time to have a planning for retirement scheme for the whole Hong Kong. But a lot of supporters don't know that before he was campaigning for CE, when he was still the convener for the Executive Council, he was already met with the Alliance for Territory-Wide Retirement Scheme, and it gave him a lot of information about that. So he has the responsibility to study that. If he still doesn't understand the plans, then he blames the citizens. Then he will fail the citizens. So I think he just wants to delay. No matter if it's Lam Chanying or his competitor in the CE, they must look at their territory-wide retirement scheme before, as opposed to just look at it when he's the CE. The Alliance for the Territory-wide Retirement Scheme has already started giving opinions in 20 years ago, giving opinions to the government. But many years ago, when the government launched the MPF, it's only benefited the finance sector. And now, in terms of the old age allowance, is only to boost the popularity of the CE. These OAA and the MPF cannot protect the basic living needs of citizens. The government should have a special group to discuss and study the territory-wide retirement scheme and to announce the results to the citizens and to have consultation, and then should give data to support it if they don't want to have such a scheme. And so, now the study report should not be vague and obscure. For policies, I think right now, they don't mention the policies that are of benefit to citizens. And it seems that what they want to do is that they don't want to alleviate the wealth gap and to help benefit citizens. And then they don't support these measures. And a lot of measures that in fact don't help citizens but will only improve the popularity of the CE, and they support all those measures. So I think that the allowance for old age people should not have salary or income or asset restrictions. So I think that we should have a sustainable planning for a retirement scheme.
Next, Mr. Ng Kin Wing from Grassroots Development Center. Thank you, Madam Chairman. When we discuss long-term welfare planning, we have to face structural poverty. To discuss long-term welfare planning, we must discuss the philosophy of public finance. We must discuss taxation system. To discuss long-term welfare planning, we must implement democracy for political development. In fact, if we do not do these, we're only engaged in empty words. In 2010, we already criticized this consultation document on long-term welfare planning. They only talk about planning, but do not discuss commitment. So this consultation document won't bear fruit. Mr. Lam Wen-kwong, the convener of the EXCO, said that the problem facing Hong Kong is not wealth gap, but the poor people become poorer. This is just to defend the administration. He does not want to admit that our society is facing structural poverty. In fact, when we discuss welfare development, we can easily be attacked by society. When we talk about welfare, we'll be accused of being sinners for 1,000 years. In fact, this is government business collusion. Nobody will try to tackle the root of the problem. When facing such a society, how should we discuss welfare planning for the long term? You're creating difficulty for Mr. Matthew Cheung. We criticized Mr. Matthew Cheung for being a receiver in the past. He's willing to listen to public views, and later he became a tape recorder. Now he became an audio aid, a hearing aid. Just look at Oriental Daily. Today's editorial says that rather than distributing candies through the budget, we should concentrate on universal retirement protection. Now, the newspaper is supporting Mr. C.Y. Leung. It said that long-term benefits can result from immediate measures. So, Mr. Matthew Cheung, please resolve structural poverty by adopting universal retirement protection. Just now, many friends already touched upon the details. I won't repeat them. Next, Alliance for Universal Pension, their organizer, Mr. Ao Yeung Kwon Tong. Thank you, Madam Chairman. I really have to sigh sitting here. 2 years ago, the government also discussed long-term welfare planning. Today, there's no difference. Earlier, the OALA launched was a short-term, short-sighted, and non-committed initiative. Many organizations said on many occasions that after having OALA, less elders will be picking up waste paper, cardboard boxes on the streets. That's not true. To strive for universal retirement protection, our aim is not to reduce the number of elders picking waste paper, cardboard boxes. We'd like to provide universal retirement protection for the elders. So we really have to clarify the concepts. Well, if OALA alone is so short-sighted, for CSSA for the elderly, OAA and elderly subsidy, as well as continuous poverty within society, how can we solve the problem? Should we just increase OAA, OALA, CSSA for the elderly, thus adding to the burden of our younger generations? If we force OALA upon society, we're just like forcing society to swallow this new initiative. Well, the budget was mentioned just now. Whenever we touch upon budget, if the budget is to be bundled with the policy address, the government will be taking away from society chances to discuss the issues and social aspirations. Well, the media said that this year we'll have a huge surplus. Our treasury is flooded with money. All along, we've been advocating for a seeding fund to promote universal retirement protection. Should we not say for the future? That is, we must have a timetable and route map for universal retirement protection. I'd like to clarify something. On many occasions, Mr. Matthew Cheung, that under the Commission on Poverty, there's a working group to study universal retirement protection. That's actually misleading because the COP is not open, is not transparent. Whenever we asked about the 3 major pillars, we asked whether the enhancement of the MPF would be discussed. Again, the administration was misleading the public. We must adopt measures to implement or address public aspirations. We must have a timetable and a route map for universal retirement protection. Thank you. Next, Mr. Wong Man Lip, Executive Member of Alliance of Ex-Mentally Ill of Hong Kong. Ever since the 31st of July 1999, since our establishment then, 14 years have lapsed. Subvention is given to us biannually, $300,000 per year for us, averaging $12,500 per month, covering staff emoluments, rent, administrative costs, and activity costs. Our only staff is responsible for administration, serving our members, developing activities and services, etc., etc. $10,000 won't be able to employ a staff member who's conversant with external and internal relationships. So there should be 2 tiers of subvention: operational cost to support recurrent expenditure, and secondly, apart from basic allocation, there should be additional supplement to allow us to organize activities to promote our society. Then we can reduce the demand for services on the part of PWDs and save social resources. For medium and long-term welfare planning, we discover that many users of services complain that they cannot go to other districts to join activities. The SWD actually promised to have cross-district activities. So cross-district activities are very inconvenient for PWDs. So I urge relevant organizations to consider allowing PWDs to cross districts to join activities. And for caseload, we're heavily loaded. Relatively speaking, we get less resources for case management and case services. And our buildings should be improved to suit PWDs. Service users should be able to live happily in local communities. Besides, we would like to have a night clinic service. Very often it's mentioned that resources and manpower are not adequate. So we suggest that private specialist doctors should be employed to provide follow-up consultation service to the public, and they should be provided in a number of districts. Thank you. Next, we're a self-help body established in 1999. Muscle diseases are rather rare in society. Therefore, welfare associations as well as healthcare personnel are not quite familiar with our needs. So gradually, our members and our society become an entry point for those who are interested in the profession. And just like the other friend said, we're like the mentally ill. We'd like to use our strengths to provide welfare services to our counterparts. But then in terms of welfare planning, are there any room for patients' associations? For so many years, subvention for patients only started in 2002. We have a self-support scheme for the PWDs. We started with dozens, and then about 100 organizations received subvention. In the early days, we welcomed the arrangement because the SWD is using so-called private money to subsidize us. We're grateful to them. However, organizations continuously say that biennial projects have resulted in huge instability for our societies, and the level of subsidy is declining. At the beginning, we got $200,000 and were able to employ a social worker with a university degree. Now we only get $150,000, and we cannot even employ a secondary school leaver. We're not that competitive. So, for our society, for our patients' associations, will welfare planning accord some room for us? Mr. Matthew Zheng mentioned welfare facilities. What about patients' associations? Shall we be given space and venues for activities? With funding and venues, we can healthily develop and complement welfare planning. Next, Ms. So Mei Ying. Well, when we talk about muscle or neuromuscular disease, in the end, we may lose all our health, and even one breath may cost us money. And we're talking about cost to the tune of $10,000 to $20,000, and there's no hope for recovery for this disease. Family members are serving these patients unconditionally, but social support is badly inadequate. We have CCF, but it's not for those above the age of 60. Maybe they think that those above 60 have OAA. So they need respiratory equipment, $2,000 plus $2,000, and then disability allowance. Now, for ordinary households, this is really huge expenditure, and they have to apply for funding every year. At the same time, they have to take care of the patients. So what help is the administration offering to these patients? We don't see any outlet for them. And even if they have domestic helpers may go on leave or holidays, and family members will have to take care of the patients. So most patients will choose to stay at home. Well, some may choose to stay in hospital. That will be $1,000 per day or $30,000 per month. So we would like to serve these patients more effectively. Therefore, the Neuromuscular Disease Association would like the government to listen to our views, and residential care can be provided to those who cannot stay at home. Community care should be enhanced as well. And if a patient is living with his family members, why can't the patient apply for CSSA in his own name? Then his family members don't need to seek divorce and endure poverty. In the short term, there should be a special disability allowance for those patients who need a high degree of care in employing domestic helpers, procuring respiratory equipment, etc. This is actually not welfare. This is actually our right. So we would like to have an implementation timetable. In terms of planning, you have to manifest this. Otherwise, you cannot pragmatically and appropriately address their needs. You should visit these patients. Maybe you should stay with these patients for 2 days to experience their day-to-day living. Next, we have 肌肉萎縮症倡議小組, a wheelchair-bound patient, 印春傑多發性硬化病症類小組. Well, normally, I worked as a normal person, and then in 2005, I had the first outbreak. The lower part of my body was paralyzed, and the respiratory function of the lungs had declined. I relied on my savings then. And then I exhausted my savings. From 2005 till now, 8 odd years have elapsed. And I had to visit 10 disciplines of the hospital rather than just 3. My wife's salary is around $13,000 odd per month. I also have a child. At that time, my child was only 3 years old. Now, it's 12 years old, is in secondary school. And we rely on my wife for paying property installments, taking care of the child, etc. I rely on disability allowance, $2,000 odd, but medication is expensive. Follow-up consultations every year, traveling expenses, and the basic necessities cost me $50,000 odd per year. Now, these are the commodities that I have to use every day. The nurse came to my home and asked whether I was receiving CSSA. I said no. Well, the SWD treated me as transparent. I personally did consider committing suicide. I asked the other patients whether or not I should apply for personal CSSA, but I was just like a beggar. They told me that I had to separate from my wife, then I'd better commit suicide. I'd better not sit here. For PWDs and people like me, we're just like beggars when we apply for personal CSSA. So I'd rather bid farewell to my life. I have 2 points to make. Number one, government officials, in particular Mr. Matthew Cheung, the Secretary, after listening to us today, should enhance the special disability allowance and enhance the CSSA scheme. Thank you. Next, Ms. Tong. Madam Chairman, I was surprised by receiving a notification. I came to Hong Kong 5 years ago. I was studying social work, and the lecturers were already discussing long-term welfare planning. But in the past few years, apart from the consultation document in 2011, we heard nothing. And I heard that the government would no longer have 5-year planning, but annual consultation exercises. And now they're talking about long-term welfare planning. My feeling is one of dilemma. I really don't know what the government wants to do. So today, I'd like the administration to send us a clear message. Do we need a 5-year midterm planning, 5-year long-term planning, such that clear indicators can be given to us, such that members of the welfare sector and our colleagues will know how we can match government policies?
Mr. Zhang, you are representative of the government's Population Policy Committee, and there is an important measure as stated in the paper. But then in that paper, 1/10 of the users have not been covered. The 120,000 people, elderly people, who are now living in Guangdong, and there are around 200,000 babies by the doubly non-PR women. So they are born in Hong Kong, but then their parents are not Hong Kong residents. But then gradually they may come back to Hong Kong to study or receive other social services, but you have not included them in the paper. The first line of the SWAG's report said that things must be people-oriented and there should be inclusion. But actually, the new arrivals and the ethnic minorities have come up to my mind. There are over 200,000 new arrivals and ethnic minorities number 200,000, but you haven't mentioned anything about them. The Women's Commission offers courses to these new arrivals and ethnic minorities. This is the only point made. But then now there are different types of households or families. So just now I talked about 120,000, 200,000, 200,000, and 200,000, almost 1/10 of Hong Kong's population. You haven't said how you are going to serve them. So this shows how important a mid to long-term social welfare plan is. We serve new arrivals and ethnic minorities. To a certain extent, the public are of the view that they are receiving resources, but they really need help. Will the government do something to help them? Next, Mr. Wong Kai-hing from New Arrival Women League. Good morning. I want to talk about the new arrival women. They face a lot of problems because of all the problems in the social welfare system. The new arrival women are newcomers in Hong Kong, but they are also Hong Kong residents. But then the government has taken the lead to discriminate against them. There are a lot of restrictions on them, so they are like second-class residents. They are living in an unjust manner. If you want to take care of the new arrival women, well, their biggest problem is the 7-year residence rule. This must be changed. Different welfare policies have an application threshold about the 7-year residence rule. And this also reflects whether these people have made economic contribution. And it also affects their CSSA and public housing applications. Some people said that people rely on children's CSSA to feed themselves. If you think of new arrival women, they have to take care of their children. How can they take up employment? But then they cannot rely on CSSA because they are not able to meet the 7-year residence rule. So they have to rely on children's CSSA. And there are a lot of dangers concerning the compartmentalized units and so on. Many of the tenants there are new arrivals and mainland families. They live in these cubicles or apartments. Why? Because there are not enough public housing units. Even if there are enough public housing units, they haven't resided here for 7 years, so they cannot apply for the public housing. For the zero quota on doubly non-PR women, well, this measure will also affect the single non-PR women. And this is only a broad-brushed approach of differentiating the mainland women. Hong Kong people are categorized by the amount of economic contribution they are making. But very often the statistics are not accurate. The government said that there are not enough resources, so there's the need for the 7-year residence rule. But I think the numbers are only exaggerated. You always say that there are not enough bed spaces, but you have so much money in the treasury. Why don't you invest the money in the public healthcare sector? And you are not using the money on civil servants or other people. You said there are not enough public housing units, still you are not building more PRH. And you are not changing the CSSA system. The payment rates and also the waiting time is unreasonable. So you are just telling lies about not having enough resources. Thank you. Government Mod 1 Staff General Union, Mr. Choi Yak-kang. Thank you, Chairman. Happy Chinese New Year, ladies and gentlemen. The existing social welfare policy is problematic. It lacks the concept of social insurance. If we think that social resources can only be given to those who are most in need, then the result will be that we have more and more poor people. Poverty will be accentuated. As regards mid to long-term social welfare policies, well, even Premier Wen talked about the threat of aging population in Geneva. So I think a CE who lives up to his mission should not shirk the responsibility unless he is going to leave his position soon. Now, with more debates, we will know the truth. We won't worry about comparison. We hope the government can set up a task force to look into different retirement options and consult the public and build public consensus. I want to see what kind of excuse the government can put forth. Finally, let me restate. Retirement protection is not only a social welfare problem. We have to also think of the threats from aging population. If we don't do it now, what will happen in the future? There may be two scenarios. One, you will wait till when we are 65 years old before you do anything. And number two, there will be excessive optimism, as in the case of Greece. So, in the past, we expressed our objection against the current arrangement. If some people are crashed by cars, if they do not pay attention to the traffic lights, then should we ask people not to cross the road, or should we ask people not to refer to the traffic signals? Thank you. Next, Frontline Welfare Employees Union, Neighborhood and Workers Service Center, Ms. Leung Ching-shan. There should be another deputation in front of me. Yes, Mr. Leung Tak-fai, Frontline Welfare Employees Union. I want to talk about youth employment policy. Before talking about that, in the policy address, it is said that the activity worker position will be extended for 1 year. But then when one person quits, another will be retrieved. But gradually, they will be phased out. I think for this policy, there is a lack of human-oriented approach. We are talking about 2,600 PWs. They will be just dealt with. That's it. Concerning youth employment, we have to pay attention to the personal growth of these people. For these 2,600 people, they're not like blank pieces of paper. They do not lack working capabilities. Some of them have worked in retail and catering business, or some of them have taken up clerical work. But gradually, they realize that those positions are not of interest to them, and so they have joined the social welfare sector. Even though this position is a short-term or temporary position, but then they have identified many successful examples. Many people have become social workers. Many of them have built up their assets and capital, and they have become kindergarten assistants and tutors in interest classes. So I think they have become the dreams of many young people. If this position is phased out, if these positions will gradually disappear, there will be a lot of chaos. Some young people may have some plans already. Some may want to take social work courses, but if they cannot meet the university's admission requirements, they need 2 years relevant work experience. If these positions are cut, they won't be able to accumulate the necessary work experience. So it seems that they won't be able to become social workers. If this position is cut, in relation to manpower arrangement, these PW positions have been included in their establishment. So within 1 year's period, if this position would be phased out, I don't think frontline workload can be alleviated. Besides, for the service users, these PWs have taken up a lot of frontline work. For example, they have been on duty on inquiries counter, and for basic day-to-day operation of the center, well, they come into contact with kaifongs regularly. So I hope the government will pay attention to youth's employment, and I hope that the PWs can be employed on a long-term basis. Thank you. Next, Ms. Leung Ching-shan, Neighborhood and Workers' Service Center. I think Leung Chun-ying has told many lies about social welfare. When he was standing for election, he said that there would be mid to long-term objectives, but then in the policy objective, he only said that things will be done in a flexible way. And the second lie is, under the lump sum grant system, Mr. Leung Chun-ying said in his platform that the system should be perfected gradually, but nothing is mentioned in the policy address. Under the lump sum grant, in the past there were 3,000 PWs, and now, because of the establishment, the government has not been taking care of them. So first, these PWs have been cut, and the excuse was about youth employment. But then these people are channeled to the social welfare sector. Their promotion and career opportunities have not been taken care of. Their pay is only $8,000. If they are only Form 3 graduates, they are only paid $6,000. Even with inflation, their pay has not been increased. Some deputations talked about the elderly. Right now, there is no retirement protection, and there is elderly poverty problem. And we will face youth poverty as well. If the government does not put in place a long-term plan, well, in the past, there was white paper. Now, there is the worry that youth poverty will become elderly poverty in the future. Regarding the lump sum grant, it should be reviewed by the government. For manpower establishment, a lot of PWs and other co-workers in supporting grades are in a very chaotic situation. Mr. Zhang just said that concerning rehabilitation and elderly service, there will be more positions for the related workers. The 400 PWs that were cut previously might be incorporated in rehabilitation, in the rehabilitation sector, because there is a lack of manpower there. We ask that the government should formalize the PW's grade, and there should be a service plan and timetable. We don't want a small government, big market. There should be retirement protection, and PW positions should be formalized. Thank you. Next. Left 21, Mr. Wang Wengqi. Good morning. I don't know what the government is now doing. There are so many problems in our society. A few months ago, we discussed territory-wide retirement protection. Then the government only offered a 2,200 elderly allowance. But then it is not enough to cover their life after retirement. And now in the public housing waiting list, there are 200,000 odd people. They may have to wait for more than 10 years before they can be housed. And for youth, there are a lot of problems. So why can't the government build more public housing units? In Hong Kong, it is said that we have 9-year free education, but in many other countries, there's 10-year free education, and tuition is free in universities. Now, many university graduates owe the government $300,000, $400,000. They have to repay the loan in many, many years, and they have to support their parents and pay mortgage. The government has done nothing to solve the problems. It is not true to say that we don't have resources, but the resources are in the hands of the big consortia like Mr. Li Ka-shing. For example, Cheung Kong last year earned 40 to 50 billion of profit. If 1% is taxed, we already have a few billion or even over 10 billion of tax revenue. The the money can be used to offer a lot of social services. For example, more public housing units can be built, and university or tertiary education tuition fee can be waived. There can be territory-wide retirement protection. Healthcare services can be improved so that social problems can be solved, wealth gap can be narrowed, and so on. The government always said that in Hong Kong, we have free economy. We are leading in the world in this regard, and we should be happy. But at the same time, our wealth gap is also #1 in the world. Should we feel proud of this, Mr. Matthew Zhang? Regarding the wealth gap, this is not something that can be tackled by your bureau alone. It involves the overall financial philosophy of the government. So financial resources should be reallocated. We think that there should be a Li Ka-shing tax in Hong Kong, like the Warren Buffett tax, so that the big consortia, the tycoons, should be taxed more heavily. They have profited from us for many, many years, many decades, and they have led to the wealth gap. So please tell the government, please look into the possibility of a Li Ka-shing tax in Hong Kong. Okay, thank you. Next, Mr. Lee Chak-mun, 青年撐退保聯合陣線. I agree with Mr. Wong Weng-chi of Left 21. Matthew Zhang, do you know why there should be a Li Ka-shing tax? In the U.S., the Warren Buffett tax has led to many arguments among the between the two parties. But at least Obama had succeeded in putting in place a Warren Buffett tax, 35%. Now, what is the profits tax in Hong Kong? 16.5%. So we are just half of the tax in the U.S. You said that in Hong Kong we have free economy and low tax. If tax rates are increased, then the tycoons and the big consortia may withdraw their investments. Talking about the 16.5% profits tax, well, in Causeway Bay, have you been to Lee Gardens? And I have been to the wonton noodle shop a number of times. Every time before the July 1st demonstration, I went there. Now it's had closed down. A number of similar small wonton noodle shops have also closed down. July is coming. Do you know what Kinghua is? Well, we often go to that shopping center to buy clothes. And many of the shops there will close down in July because of the high rent. The property developers have been increasing rent. Why? Because they know that even if they increase rent, these small shop owners won't be able to survive. Still, there are the big consortia. We always say that Hong Kong is a diversified and pluralistic society, so we should have Li Ka-shing tax. Because with these large consortia, our business is just very homogeneous. We only have jewelry and watch stores on Nathan Road and in Tsim Sha Tsui. I can't remember the name of that street. Do we have the small noodle shop there? Even Li Yuen, with a history of 40 years, on East Point Street or Road, paid $3,000 in rent 40 years ago, and now they are asked to pay $900,000. And our profits tax rate has been cut from 17.5 to 16.5%. The small shop owners cannot afford to pay $900,000 of rent, and they are not able to survive. How many people do they have to employ? So this is all about retirement protection. We're asking for a three-party contribution, and profits tax rates should go up. This is a simple approach. Matthew Zhang, you should not hold your head down. You should look into a territory-wide retirement protection. There should be three-party contribution and a Li Ka-shing tax to alleviate poverty. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is 左翼小子, Mr. Chan Tuk-wan. So I've heard so many deputations here. And now they're talking to someone. I don't know, I should call him a puppet or a national machine. I feel very angry. Now, a lot of people are calling me and saying that some social activists have been arrested. And one of them have to be in jail for more than 3 weeks. This is political oppression. Why is it that, why we have to be more radical? And then so the police have excuses to arrest us because you completely ignore us. So we have to go to all these panels, but it's completely useless. You never listen to us, Matthew Zhou. Why isn't in a policy address, Leung Chun-ying keeps on saying that we need to discuss universal retirement scheme. All these people are here today, and you say that we have to have social welfare planning. And universal retirement scheme is the most simple and comprehensive plan. And we hope that when we get old, we have a secure living, because we have used most of our lives to serve the society. Why is it that Leung Chun-ying today keeps on saying that universal retirement scheme needs to be discussed? Is it that you don't listen to us? Or is it that, Matthew Zhou, you have said this to the CE, but he completely ignores you because you're useless? We've always said that long-term social welfare planning, this has been discussed for many years. When I was in university first year, I first found this. And I found these documents. At that time, people are saying that social welfare is a traitor to the social welfare. So why are you so far away from us people? Do you really hear us in terms of what is welfare? You are the Secretary for Labor and Welfare, but you don't really understand what is labor and welfare. What is social welfare? You don't understand what we're saying here today. Why is it today Leung Chun-ying says that he really cares about people's livelihood, but how can he tolerate even one elderly person have to be a beggar on the streets? How can he tolerate an elderly person being frozen to death in the winter? This happens in third world countries, but Hong Kong is the most developed economy. And we have all these fireworks and festivals, but why is it so many people have to live in subdivided flats? Are you listening to us, Matthew Zhou? Have you told CE of our voices? You are just a traitor. And shame on you. Shame on the traitor of social welfare. Shame on the social welfare traitor, Matthew Zhou. I want universal retirement scheme. Everyone, I hope you hear our voices. We're very loud because we want you to hear us. We want a true social security and not piecemeal social security. Yes, your time is up. Well, I hope all the deputations will respect the rules of the LegCo. I respect all of your activities, but I hope that you also respect our operation. Thank you. Next is the Association for Parents of the Severely Mentally Handicapped, Mr. Lee Chi-yong. Yes, thank you. Good morning. We think that the administration, after 1999's abandonment, their abandonment of 5-year planning is very, very irresponsible, because in building care centers needs time. In terms, now the social welfare planning is going to, a user must pay their own services, and that is completely violate the principles of social welfare. This shows that the administration thinks that social welfare is a charity and almsgiving. Also, the administration says that they want to emphasize family, of a family caring the disabled people. If there's a person who is frail in the family and their financial difficulties, a lot of these frail elderly people or disabled people will have to leave their families and get the subsidies that way. So it severely disrupts their family life and makes them not have care. Furthermore, in the reports about administrations, it says that there are 68,000 around disabled people. But this was not conducted by an official poll. So in the policy address, the CE said that in terms of a land supply, there was no mention of care centers for persons with disabilities. He's only talking about consultation and studies. For the severely handicapped, mentally handicapped, a lot of the schools and the service facilities are in very faraway places. So if they need to go to the medical clinics, they face a lot of difficulties in terms of transportation. We really hope the administration can launch a reasonably priced rehabilitation taxis and other procedures to ease the convenience for transportation for the persons with disabilities. And we also hope that there can be small-sized care facilities, even such as near PRH, or perhaps even to rent some small units so that these people can be taken care of by their families and not be separated. Thank you. Next is Mr. Hui Kampong, 多發性眼病症組員. Yes, thank you. Now, I personally have this disease. Now, this is a neurosurgery disease. I was diagnosed in 2008. At that time, I felt that half of my face was paralyzed, as well as my right hand. And later on, there are a lot of scars that are left on me. And this has severely impacted my ability to speak, to swallow, and other activities. When I go to the doctor, he sees that I can move around, and so it doesn't seem there are severe disability, and I don't have to be in a wheelchair. So he always suggests that I find a job and say that I should not have any subsidy. But actually, my ability to speak, to move my legs, have been severely impacted, and I forget things very easily, and I cannot stand for more than 1 hour. When I speak, I stutter, and I can't see things clearly. I try to find a job, such as in McDonald's or in university residences, but because the hours are too long, and I can't stand for too long, because my feet would feel pain, so I quit my job. And I also try to work in laundry services, and it's also because of these same reasons that I quit my job. In the end, I tried to find a job as a telephone operator, but because I can't speak clearly, I didn't even have an interview opportunity. So I have 3 suggestions. I think that there should be comprehensive review of what disability means, and immediately do this, and should also consult the disability definition in the ICF. So, because a lot of people have limitations in terms of their physical ability, and should consider factors such as their environment. Besides the doctor's evaluation, other professionals should also evaluate the particular individual. Thank you. Yes, thank you. Next is Hong Kong Women Workers Association, Ms. Nguyen Ling. Thank you. We think that the long-term planning should solve the poverty. As many allies have said, poverty is not because we don't have enough resources, but it's because of the framework for distributing the resources is unjust. So we think that a mid to long-term planning review should be at the structure and should not have piecemeal services. So we think that as a women's workers, we must conduct review of the structure. First, we think that as a long-term planning, we should have a universal retirement scheme. As we've said for many years, OALA is a very unclear objective, and we don't even know how long this scheme will be conducted. So how can old people have feel secure that this allowance can help them in terms of their poverty? Also, there are many loopholes. A lot of women in the family cannot be secure. So they are very afraid of their old age. So there must be a universal retirement protection. Further, in terms of the direction of this scheme, there should be a discussion on this, and not just discuss on whether or not we should conduct it. We should have a timetable on this and should have a specific seed fund for the retirement. We also think that we should look at the developments of child care. We know that child care in Hong Kong is only for those 6 and under, and it's very expensive and in very inconvenient locations and inflexible time. A lot of women cannot use these services. Because of these inadequacies, the women cannot continue to work, and so they cannot alleviate their poverty. So all these families have to continue to live under the poverty line. So in the long-term planning, the administration should first review the attitude of neglecting the women's workers. Now, the SWD also thinks that always use volunteers to let them to work on these services, but that's completely disrespectful. So in terms of social service, it must be a permanent employment and to give them minimum wage so to at least child care people can benefit. Furthermore, they should also hire some women to develop their potential to be child carers. So this can allow them to enter into the workforce, and so to also increase more child carers in the community to help grassroots community. Lastly, we should also look at labor security. Without labor security, we are just pushing women workers towards poverty. Thank you. Next is Mr. Aoyong Tachoy for Labour Party. Thank you, Chairman. Sorry, Mr. Chung, I'm here. A few years ago, and this social welfare planning was inadequate. It is done by a advisory committee that has no actual power. Now, in terms of the discussions, a lot of times the consensus had not been reached, but they still put forth, such as multi-party stakeholder, 5-year planning, and such as flexibility. No one agreed to these principles, but why is it that last year the LWB can accept such a proposal? Now, you may say that in the past few years, the welfare has increased for the past few years. That's what I think you must have said. But I think in the past few years, the Hong Kong administration has actually decreased. Because even though there's more money, the social welfare has actually become even worse. And a lot of items in terms of livelihood, we use a data-based study, such as for CSSA or transportation concession schemes. But even though you give such data, in fact, what you're doing is freezing the benefits given. Now, and also you're making the benefits to be outside of the framework. So you take a lot of the framework, a lot of the benefits given are one time only, such as the community care fund for the and nothings. But this is just passing the buck to the most grassroots people, just giving them a little bit benefit and then letting them survive on their own. Next is that for a new welfare, such as a OALA, needs to have limits in terms of assets. And furthermore, in terms of overall expenditure is being a bubble, so our income is only being used to non-permanent profits, such as selling land. So because of these 4 policies, the administration in the past few years is decreasing our welfare. It's not just because there's more money, then there's more welfare. So how can we accept this relic from Donald Tsang, this old planning documents? So I hope that I would like to ask the administration, in the new term of the government, will you have a new planning to replace the old? Thank you. Hello, deputations. Thank you for coming. We will remember your suggestions. The panel will follow up on your ideas. Second, I hope that when you express your opinions, some of you have given us documents, and I hope that you will also give us, if you haven't, so we can look at them further. Lastly, another group of deputations will come, so we'll have a break for 5 minutes. It includes going to the bathroom. Will the officials respond? So that won't be happen now. We must go to the next part. We understand, because we have a very tight schedule today. But don't worry, our colleagues will be here and we will speak for you. Thank you, everyone.